gang. All that we study in the book of Exodus, and particularly this beginning when the Israelites are being taken out of Egypt, all of this is commemorated. The Lord gave them these feasts and these opportunities to commemorate and remember these things. And this would go forever. They were instructed to do this, to remember these things. And this is the way that the Lord revealed himself to his people and through his people to all of the world through this commemoration. So we read this and it can sort of pass by these things, but think about this. This was a father and a mother enjoying a feast and telling their sons, their daughters, about what that feast meant, about the day that the Lord intervened after 430 years, that he came to them, sent a man, and that he took them out of Egypt, out of their bondage, and delivered them. What a great story, and it gives you the whole context of Exodus, that it becomes about very real people and families and their relationship with their God. And it's so easy to read through those things. So I'm Doug Ford. I'm the pastor at Calvary Chapel, Sweetwater, and I want to just help you bring the Bible to life. And we're at Exodus 13 as we continue on verse by verse, chapter by chapter. And if you would, just hit the subscribe button, and then if you hit the little bell, you'll get notifications when the next videos come out. And we'll try to keep these things going if people find them useful. Chapter 13 of Exodus. The Lord said to Moses, consecrate to me every firstborn male. So the idea of consecration was to be set apart for God's purpose, for holiness. And so in this idea, was many believe it was sort of, these were to be sort of the priest of the family. This was before the Levitical priests had not been determined yet. The Lord had not given the law to set up the Levitical priest. And so the firstborn would have been set aside, set apart to become that sort of priest for the family, to grow up into that role, play that role. And anytime you look at these firstborn, you sort of look at this as one that is set aside for God's purpose and calling, but it's representative of the whole, and that person would lead the rest of the family and lead the whole to God, the whole family. So the Lord said to Moses, consecrate to me the firstborn male, the first offspring of every womb among the Israelites belongs to me, whether human or animal. So we even set apart the firstborn of the cattle and of these animals, and so it was, those would be the firstborn of those would be set apart for holiness, for sacrifices unto the Lord. Then Moses, verse 3, said to the people, commemorate this day, the day that you came out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, because the Lord brought you out of it with a mighty hand. You see the mighty hand of God frequently, just that sort of that picture that we can understand. Obviously, God was spirit. He didn't have hands until Christ came, but that idea of his mighty hand was moving and shaking and acting on their behalf. Eat nothing containing yeast today. In the month of Aviv, you are leaving. Verse 5, when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites, the land he swore to your ancestors to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you are to observe this ceremony in this month. And for 7 days eat bread made without yeast. On the seventh day hold a festival to the Lord. Eat unleavened bread during those 7 days. Nothing with yeast is to be seen among you, nor shall any yeast be seen anywhere within your borders. On that day tell your son, I do this because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. This observance will be for you like a sign on your hand and a reminder on your forehead that this law of the Lord is to be on your lips. And for the Lord brought you out of Egypt with a mighty hand, and you must keep his ordinance at the appointed time, year after year. So this commemoration was an ordinance that the Lord ordained for them to never forget these important and defining moments. Something we can sort of take from this is that there are these defining moments and these things that the Lord brings in our life that we are to commemorate, we are to remember. And the biggest that we are to remember is the day that the Lord was resurrected. And that is what we commemorate, and we remember when we take the Lord's Supper as a body of believers, and we take what we refer to as communion, or the Lord's Supper. We take the bread and the cup, and we commemorate. And the Lord said to do this in remembrance of him. And so that's probably the first and foremost commemoration. And then on a personal level, we remember the time we were born again, or the season that we were born again. We remember our baptism, and then as we act in that role as a believer, we may remember as we speak into others people's lives when our family goes through those same events. And so those commemorations become really altars unto the Lord within the timeline of our life, that there are things throughout our life that the Lord does that we should always remember, and it helps us to stay focused on the things of the Lord. So there to commemorate this, and he said that he has taken them to this land. Remember, all of these people, it's like a couple million people are being led out of Egypt. So all they ever knew was Egypt. That for 430 years, these people have been there. They went down as a family of 70 into Egypt to get away from the famine, and now they're going home as 2 million, somewhere in there, people that have never been to Israel, never been to that land. And he says, I'm taking you to the land I swore to your forefathers. And so the Lord is saying that this covenant promise that I gave to your forefathers is your covenant promise, and that he is going to bring this about in their life and take them to this land flowing with milk and honey. And so as he takes them into the land, they are to observe this feast of unleavened bread. And the unleavened bread is the idea that they left in haste. It's linked very closely with the Passover. It's almost used interchangeably with Passover because they're happening at the same time, overlapping. And so the idea of the Feast of Unleavened Bread is that they left in such a rush, they left in a hurry, that there was no time for any yeast to work and make the bread rise, but that they just bake the bread in haste. And so it was flat. It was there was no yeast into it. It wasn't puffed up. And of course, when we get in the New Testament, yeast is this picture of sin, and there's pride and this puffing up that a little yeast goes through the whole batch, and so you sort of get this glimpse of this idea of yeast being sort of this picture of sin. And so they were leaving Egypt, and they were to leave behind the sin of Egypt, the idols in Egypt, the things of Egypt that didn't belong in the promised land, didn't belong with them, but that they were trusting in the Lord. And so it's sort of a picture of leaving sin behind and separating themselves from the yeast of Egypt. And Egypt always is sort of this picture of the world. So they were separating themselves from the yeast of Egypt. And so they were to celebrate this in this way. And so when they celebrate it, they were supposed to tell their sons that this is why we do this. This is, son, this is what I do. You get so this picture of mom and dad sitting down with their family and saying, this is why we do this, because the Lord delivered us out. And that was such a special time and a special day. Even if they, generation after generation, they could tell this story that your great-great-grandfather or whoever it was there, and he walked through the parted Red Sea, and the Lord brought him out. And he could tell this story to their sons. And this observance to them would be like a sign, on your hand, be like a constant reminder on your hand. It'd be a reminder on your forehead, sort of. I picture this as this reminder would be something that would be, no matter what you're doing with your hand, the work of your hands, that this would be an effect on the work of your hands, that this would change how you do your work. This would change your thought processes because of what happened at that time. This becomes something for the Jews later, that they began to bind these scriptures on their hand, bind them on their head, on their forehead, and took it very, very literal, that they put these things and bound them that way. And so you see that in Deuteronomy. We see that in the Shema, particularly the verses of the Shema. And so this was to be a reminder. It was supposed to be in their speech and passed down from generation to generation. And you were always just one generation away from not that message and not getting brought to the next generation. So again, there's something there for us to be learned, that every generation we speak forward that gospel message, that it keeps going from generation. And if we stop, then it doesn't get to that next generation, and we starve that next generation. And we see a starving nation before us now that has little or no comprehension, the vast majority of folks, of what that gospel message is. So verse 11, after the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites and gives it to you, as he promised on oath to you and to your ancestors, you are to give over to the Lord the first offspring of every womb. All the firstborn males of your livestock belong to the Lord. Redeem with a lamb every firstborn donkey. But if you do not redeem it, break its neck. Redeem every firstborn among your son. And so this was like this purchasing out of this, that the Lord laid claim, that by his word he laid claim to these firstborn. So it's almost purchasing them back from the Lord for that. If they were not used and committed to the service of the Lord, then they had to be redeemed in that way. And so he gives us an opportunity to redeem them. Verse 14, then, in days to come, when your son asks you, what does this mean? Say to him, with a mighty hand, the Lord brought us out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed the firstborn of both people and animals in Egypt. Now, this is why I sacrifice to the Lord the first male offspring of every womb, and redeem each of my firstborn sons. And it will be like a son on your hand, a sign on your hand, and a symbol on your forehead, that the Lord brought us out of Egypt with his mighty hand. And so all of those firstborns in Egypt were under the curse of this plague, to die by this plague, but that the Lord protected them by the blood of the Lamb, that they were protected behind that blood as they painted those marks across their door frames, and quite literally were covered and hidden behind the blood of the Lamb, which is all pointing towards Jesus Christ, all pointing towards that work of the cross, that he redeemed us by that, in that same work, by his blood on the cross, that we were redeemed. And so it's picture looking forward to Christ. Verse 17, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. God said if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. The Lord was very mindful of how tentative of a position they were in, but that they were a people that had been ruled over and told what to do all the time in bondage of their work and how to work. And so to follow after the Lord in a way that required them to have faith was something completely new. And we've all been there. If we're believers, we've all been there, that we have to learn to do that and learn to trust the Lord. And somebody once said that every day in 1,000 ways the Lord asks you the same question: do you trust me? Do you trust me in this? Do you trust me in this? And he teaches us how to trust him in every step. And so we trust him with every breath, every heartbeat. We also trust him in the dark, in the times that we can't sort of experience and feel his presence. In the times we go through very difficult circumstances, we learn to trust him even in those things. And so he didn't take them through where they had to face war right away, because war would be a trial that he didn't think that they were ready for. And so verse 18, so God led the people around by the desert road towards the Red Sea, and the Israelites went up out of Egypt ready for battle. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, because Joseph had made the Israelites swear an oath. He had said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up with you from this place. And so that promise that oath that was sworn by the Israelites, they took it serious. It wasn't like, after, 30 years, it was sort of just forgotten about. But from generation to generation, he said, there was an oath that was sworn, and that was passed down to the next generation. It says, you might be the generation that takes these bones back, the bones of Joseph, you must take them back. And if you are the generation, you got to make sure this gets done. This is important to fulfill an oath. It shows the absolute priority and the importance of an oath to them, and importance of the oath to God. And so he said God would surely come to him. It's sort of a prophetic voice of Joseph saying God will surely come to your aid, and then to carry the bones up. And you can look that up in Genesis 50, verse 25, where he says that, and carry his bones up from that place. And so they did. And after leaving Sukkoth, they camped at Etham at the edge of the desert. And by day, the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in the front of the people. So that's pretty cool, that the Lord shows that he is the way, that he becomes that light and that protection for them, that he shows himself mighty. Can you imagine being within 2 million people and seeing this pillar of cloud, that God is leading the way and showing them where to go, taking them out of this bondage, leading them to a new life? How exciting! And to know that we can know and look at this, and it comes to mind that the Lord says he'll never leave us or forsake us, and that's exactly what that says, that he wouldn't leave them, he wouldn't forsake them, but that by day that he was that pillar of cloud protecting them from the harshness of the sun, the cool, keeping a cool shade over them as he led the way. He was this pillar of cloud, and then by night he was this pillar of fire that lit the way that they could travel either day or night, and that he would never leave them, never forsake them, that he was always in that place in the front of his people, leading the way. What a great passage! What a great message for Exodus 13. So, which really just makes you look forward to Exodus 14. So, hope you'll hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications, look for the next lesson on Exodus 14. Look back in the library, you can catch all of the other previous lessons, and there's some other things there you might be interested in too. But if you would hit that subscribe button, that would be great, and we'll keep making videos and look forward to sharing them. And Doug Ford. I'm just helping bring the Bible to life, to your life. And I hope you enjoyed this study. Thank you.